Hello everyone. I hope all of you are doing well, and today I'm here with the next lecture which I had already informed you earlier, and we are today going to discuss about monitoring and evaluation frameworks. We have already understood that in a M&E plan, that is a monitoring and evaluation plan, the M&E framework, the monitoring and evaluation framework, is a very important part of it, which we are describing right in the beginning of the M&E plan. We have to outline the framework. Now, what is this framework? To understand this better, we will go through this particular lecture and this set of slides. So I hope I will be able to explain things. This is a little difficult, but I hope you will be able to understand. And you would have probably heard about concept mapping. You would have heard about how we understand the different schemes with which things are going to operate. So all of that is indicated in a framework. So let us start. So what is a framework? So a framework is the key element of the M&E plan, as I have already told you, which depicts the components of a project and the sequence of steps needed to achieve the desired outcomes. So when we are saying that it's about an M&E framework, that means it is the framework is going to tell us the different components of a project. What is there and what will be the sequence of steps in which the different activities will be carried out in order to achieve the desired outcomes. So a framework is something which is going to connect the objectives of a program to its outcomes, to its results, to its processes and the activities which are being carried out. It will help increase understanding of the program's goals and objectives. It will define the relationship between factors key to implementation and delineate the internal and external elements that could affect its success. So a framework is not only going to tell us about the key elements within a particular program, it is not only going to talk about the factors within the process which is going to affect its implementation, but it is also going to help us understand the internal and external elements. So when we are running a particular program, we are not running it in isolation of the social context. So hence an M&E framework helps us to understand all the different external elements as well which might be affecting the implementation of a particular program. It is crucial for understanding and analyzing how a program is supposed to work. So this is basically the structure, the line against which we are going to judge as to whether we are proceeding in the right direction or not. Now there are multiple types of frameworks. I'm here outlining 4 basic types of framework, which are the conceptual framework, the result framework, the logic model and the logic framework. And I'm going to explain to you one by one these different types of framework. Let me tell you that in a particular project, we might be using multiple types of framework and at different stages of the project, and it will be helpful for us in the monitoring and evaluation of a particular project. I'm going to tell you which framework is going to be essential at what stage of a project later on. But first of all, let us understand each one of these M&E frameworks. So first comes the conceptual framework. So conceptual framework is useful for identifying and illustrating the factors and relationships that influence the outcome of a program or intervention. So we are trying to understand through this the different factors and the relationship between these different factors that influence the outcome of a program. So when we are running a program within a particular social context, then there are multiple factors which influence it positively, which influence it negatively. So this is sort of a conceptual mapping through which we are able to identify the different factors which influence the running of a particular program. Conceptual frameworks are typically shown as diagrams illustrating causal linkages between the key components of a program and the outcomes of interest. So it provides us with the causal linkages between the key components of a program. Here is an example. I hope you are able to see this, the different things which are written. So this is how we are looking at the different connections between the factors which influence a program. Now this is a program supposedly which is trying to work in the health sector. Obviously a program is trying to influence the health service supply. So see this arrow here, it is trying to influence the health service supply. So when it influences the health service supply or improves the health service supply, what happens? There is better service utilization. So the health services are utilized better by people. Better utilization of health services leads to healthy practices. So once you utilize the health services better, there will be better healthy practices, which will lead to a healthy outcome. That means people's quality of life or overall health will be improved. Now, the program does not work in isolation. So there are individual and household characteristics. That means there might be a pre-existing disease which might be an individual characteristics. There are financial conditions of a particular family. So there are multiple individual and household characteristics which might also influence the service utilization. So we cannot believe that it's only the program which is going to lead to the utilization of health services. So the different individual and household characteristics also influence. So this helps us understand conceptually that the program is somehow, if it is trying to influence the service utilization, this service utilization is also affected by individual and household characteristics. Now they also affect the healthy practices. So not only the institutional service utilization but also the healthy practices which are being adopted by the people is influenced by this. So this particular section of the diagram tries to illustrate this factor. Now let us also understand that the program that we are talking about is again not in isolation. There would be other donors, the NGOs and the government which also works in the health sector, and they also are trying to connect, they are also trying to improve the health service supply. So other donors, so there would be multiple agencies which are working in the health sector. There are other NGOs and the government. They also try to influence the health service supply. So here you see this connection. There are other community factors like where is the location of that particular place, what are the prevailing cultures and social norms related to health services. So there are different community factors. So the program also has to influence certain community factors, and these community factors are also influenced by other donors. So this is a sort of a conceptual framework which tells that if there is a program, this is the context within which the program is operating. The program is connected to health services. It is trying to improve health services. It also has to work on certain community factors because it has to take into account the social norms and other geographical and other factors, religious factors which are there, which are at the community level. So health services are at an individual level as well as a community level, and then we understand that this health services supply and the community factors are also influenced by other donors and government agencies. They influence both of these factors, and then again the service utilization is also affected by individual and household characteristics. So this is sort of a conceptual framework, and you will see that it is demonstrating the different interconnectedness between the different factors which influence a particular program. So this is something which is, it's a very simple conceptual framework of within the health sector. So what we are seeing here, that a conceptual framework identifies the variables that factor into program performance. So we understood and we saw in the previous example that there are different factors like the community factor, the individual factors of the household, the characteristics of the households, what the government is doing. So it identifies the different variables that factor into program performance, depicts the ways that variables interact. So how is one connected to the other? How does one influence the other? That also, the connection between those are depicted by the conceptual framework. It outlines the results that can be expected from program activities. So we know what leads to what. We were saying in the previous example that we understand that delivery of services is expected to lead to better utilization of services. So it also outlines the results that can be expected. Step by step results are also identified in the conceptual framework. Helps program designers to develop valid measures for evaluating the success of the outcome. So when you are running a program, you need to develop valid measures for evaluating the success of the outcomes. So once we know what is supposed to affect what, it will help in the beginning of a particular program to identify the different measures by which we are going to evaluate our success. It guides the identification of appropriate indicators. As I mentioned, we'll talk about indicators again in detail, but a conceptual framework also helps in the identification of the different indicators against which we are going to measure our output. This is another example which is connected, a conceptual framework which is related to the study of child survival, and I hope it will help you to understand better. It's a little bit more complicated than the previous one. So child survival, in the context of child survival, we understand that there would be different socio-economic determinants which will influence child survival. Now a particular scholar identifies, this is a sort of a standard which kind of is taken into account when we do a conceptual framework for child survival projects. So the different biological factors are identified. There are 5 biological factors which are identified here. First, related to child survival, the different socio-economic determinants. That means the socio-economic factors which influence child survival. So maternal factors, as we know that a healthy mother is the first important thing for a healthy child. So maternal factors, what has been the maternal health, that is going to influence the child health. So maternal factors. Environmental contamination, that means what is the environment within which the child is there. If there is any contamination, obviously that is going to influence child survival. Nutrient deficiency is an important factor for child survival. Then injury, if there is any injury which might happen to the child. And then personal illness control, that means what is the personal health status of that particular child and how well the child is equipped to fight certain illness control, prevention. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 important factors which are the socio-economic determinants for child survival. Now these factors, maternal factors, environmental contamination, nutrient deficiency, injury, are seen to lead to either a healthy or a sick child. That means these factors will determine as to whether a child is healthy or a child is sick. Now, if the child is sick, what happens? There is growth faltering, that means there is lack of growth, there is stunting in the child. So, if the child is sick, it will lead to growth faltering, that means there is stunting of the child. This might lead to mortality, and acute sickness might lead to mortality. So, you see this connection here. So, all these factors lead to either a healthy child or a sick child, and then a sick child, either their growth is faltered or there is mortality. Now, let us come to another factor, which is the personal illness control. So, personal illness control, there can be two things. There can be how do we do it? Either there is prevention or there is treatment or cure. Okay. So, personal illness control can will lead to either prevention or it will require treatment. So, the prevention is going to again lead a child to either become healthy or sick. Treatment is going to lead to healthy or sick. So, this is how it is connected. So, this is how we are looking at the situations. The prevention and treatment are connected to making a child healthy or making a child sick, just like this. So, this is a conceptual model when we are looking at child survival. So, now we will move on to the next framework, which is the results framework. So, this is a conceptual framework which, as identified already, talks about the different factors which influence a particular program. The next one is a results framework. So, the results framework shows through diagram. Again, this is a diagrammatic representation. The frameworks are usually diagrammatic representations. It's like a flow chart. So, the results framework shows through diagram the direct causal relationships between the incremental results of the key activities. That means what result is going to lead to what result. And it is incremental, that means what smaller steps need to be achieved in order to achieve the greater step. So, it kind of is a hierarchical results. That means I need to get first of all a small result, and multiple small results is going to lead on to a big result. So, it's a hierarchical way of representing the different results which need to be attained one after the other. That's how the result framework tries to illustrate. So, incremental results of the key activities all the way up to the overall objective and goal of the intervention. So, obviously in every initiative there is an overall goal, that this is what we need to achieve at the end, and in order to achieve that, what are the smaller results which need to be achieved one after the other. So, that is what is shown in the results framework. It clarifies the points in an intervention at which results can be monitored and evaluated. So, it's also telling me at what point I need to monitor my results. So, are my results coming in the right direction? So, it's a very important tool for monitoring, as you understand here. It clarifies the points in an intervention at which results can be monitored and evaluated. If you remember, monitoring happens as the program is going on. So, the different smaller results that we are going to see, and if they are coming at regular intervals as expected, then we can assume that the broad goal will be achieved at the right time. Again, let us take an example of this. So, this is how it will typically look like, probably, where you will see that this is the overall goal of any particular project, and then there is something called the strategic objectives, and these are called the intermediate results, and then within each intermediate result we have the subordinate results. So, broad strategic objectives. So, there might be certain projects which will have multiple strategic objectives, and then there will be multiple intermediary results, and then multiple sub intermediary results. So, a strategic objective is an outcome that is the most ambitious result that can be achieved, and for which the organization is willing to be held responsible. So these are the broad objectives which are there, and an intermediate result is a discrete result or outcome that is necessary to achieve a strategic objective. So which we are seeing here, that this is the strategic objective. That means these are like the broad objectives of a particular project which are connected to the goal, and then these are intermediate results. That means they are independent, like small results which are there. So achieving all these multiple results is going to tell me, yes, I have achieved this particular objective. I'll again take up another example which will help you understand. So let us look at this again, an example from health sector. So here the goal is improved health status, that might be one thing, or decreased fertility. So if it is something which talks about fertility and or family implementation of certain family planning programs, so the overall goal of a particular project is like improved health status and or decreased fertility. So what can be the strategic objective for that? Improved use of health or family planning services and appropriate practices. So the goal is overall improvement. Look at the difference in the language and how we are converting a particular goal into a strategic objective. This is very important and you need to understand this. Improved health status, so that is the overall goal. That means which is a long-term goal. That means improved health status of a particular community. And then the strategic objective is improved use. So obviously improved use of health services or family planning services or whatever practices in the health sector that we are talking about. It might be vaccination or anything. So that is the strategic objective. So if we have improved use of these services, obviously in the long run it is going to lead to improved health status. Now what can be the smaller results? So there are two intermediary results which are identified. Obviously improved use is affected by two key factors. When will there be improved use of health services? Improved use of health services or family planning services will happen when there is access or availability of the services or the products which are there. So, and it will also be dependent on the quality of that service. So, one is access or availability, that means the delivery of that particular service. People will have to have access to that service which is being delivered. That means there has to be a health center in the vicinity. There has to be there are supposed to be a health center, and the medicines should be available in that particular health center. So something is like access and availability, other is quality. So there is a health center, there are doctors there, that people are not confident of the quality of that doctor. So that means if the quality of service is not there, people are shooed off after they are, or they are intimidated when they visit a primary health center. That means it is going to affect the quality of the service. So just availability does not lead to improved use, there has also to be quality. So access of service or availability of service and quality of service, these two results, if it can be ensured, then obviously it is going to lead to improved use. Now if there is going to be improved access, then what we need the commodities which have to be available, and we need to have the equity in the delivery of that service. So commodities and facilities has to be there, and there has to be equity in the delivery. That means all the people who visit that particular health center have to be treated equally, in terms of there should not be any bias in the treatment of the rich and the poor, people belonging to different caste or people belonging to different gender, all should be treated with equity. So that means everybody, irrespective of their social status, irrespective of their economic status, irrespective of their gender, should have equal access and availability to all the different services. So the services need to be, and the facilities need to be available there, and there has to be equity in the delivery. So everybody needs to have access. Only some people have access, then it is not going to lead to it. Now in terms of quality of service, that means how that can be affected, what results, that means provider performance. So that means if the performance has to be good of the service provider. If the performance of the service provider is good, obviously we understand that the quality of the service is improving. Training, if there is good training which is being provided to the service providers, if there is proper supervision of the service providers, that is going to improve the quality of service. If we have regular training of the ANMs, if we have regular training of the ASHA workers, then obviously the delivery of rural health services would improve. So training has an important bearing upon improving the quality of delivery of health services. And then proper information system, that means whether there is a proper information systems will improve the accountability of delivery. So when we have all of these in place, then there is going to be improvement in the results. So this is the way that we are able to understand as to how the different one result is going to lead to the another result. So this is how a result framework operates. Now we come to the next one, which is the logic model, and let me tell you that this will probably be a particular framework which is very broadly used, and we will also be talking about it more often. So the logic model, it provides a streamlined linear interpretation of a project's planned use of resources and its desired ends. So it is a linear model. It shows as to what leads to what. It's a linear interpretation of a project's planned use of resources. That means what are the resources which is going to be there and what is going to be the desired outcome of it, the desired end, the desired goal. It has 5 components which are input, process, output, outcome and impact. It's a linear model which shows these sections: input, process, output, outcome and impact. So how does it look like and what are these different factors? So let us we all understand that what is input. Input leads to the different resources which are invested in a program. For example, it might be technical assistance, computers, certain medicines or other things which are distributed. Input might also be the training which is provided. So if a project is all about training people for better service delivery, then training also and the different training which is provided to people also becomes an input. So it is the different financial, human, technical, community and local resources which are invested. These are the different resources which are invested. So then we come to the activities. So activities, obviously you understand, this is what is done with the inputs. So it is the activities which are carried out to achieve the program's objectives. So these are the different input, the actions and the processes and the events, the tools, the meetings, the trainings which are held. So these are the activities which are done. It is a pamphlet distribution, it is a training, what is the activity which is done with the different resources which have been invested. Now the activities lead to outputs. So outputs are the immediate results achieved at the program level through the execution of the activities. Now the outputs are at the program level. That means the tangible work products of program activities. They are the deliverables such as policy papers drafted, schools built. Okay, this is this many number of people trained. If we are talking about training, this many number of leaflets which are ultimately distributed, people have read. So output. So you have made people watch a particular promotional video that you wanted. So these many people have watched it. So outputs are tangible work products of the program activities. So what has the program? The output which is created by the program. The activities are done and it leads to outputs. This many number of trained ASHA workers. So that is the output of the program. Now outcome. Outcome is the set of short-term or intermediate results at the population level. So the outcomes are at the community level. It is not at the program level. If it is at the community level, population level, achieved by the program through the execution of the activities. So what the project expects to accomplish at the beneficiary level? It is the intended or achieved short-term and medium-term effects of an intervention's outputs. That means you had leaflets. People, after reading those leaflets, if they agree to your idea, that is your outcome. Your making them watch a video is your output. But if they like the video, if they share the video, that is your outcome probably. What people do with your output is basically the outcome. You have created hospitals, you have built schools, but outcome is when the school starts functioning, when the school starts enrolling children. That is an outcome. The output is the building of the school. The outcome is children getting enrolled in that school, the school starting, people coming to that school and enrolling their names, the teachers being appointed, the school becoming functional, and people coming to that particular school is the outcome of the project. And then last comes the impact or the goal or the overall, I won't say objective, the impact or the goal. So this is the highest end result or impact. This is the change which is expected over the long term. That means the literacy level of that particular village goes up. That means there is now no child which is not going to school. So the school enrollment ratio is complete. That means all the children have now started going to school. That is your impact. So all children start going to school. Here you have built the school. Here people enroll. That means what people do with that. And here is your impact, which is that the village becomes 100% literate, or the village becomes has above 80% literacy level. Let us take another example here. So input, if it is a program commits its human and financial resources in a sexual reproductive health program. So this is that is what the commits its human and financial resources. So human and financial resources are invested and it is towards improvement of sexual reproductive health program. The activities to carry out trainings and marketing campaigns on sexual reproductive health. So training of different people and marketing campaigns. So social marketing campaigns are done on sexual reproductive health. What is the output? Increased knowledge in this area among the people. So now if you do a survey, you will see that yes, people are now aware. So your output, you did all the trainings and you did a social marketing campaign, and it has led and made people increasingly knowledgeable about all of that. Then you have the outcome, which is people practicing safer sex. Now just making people aware is something, but people practicing, that means what people do with your output, this is the outcome. And then you have the, what is your overall goal which is achieved, which is healthier population with reduced HIV AIDS and STD rates. So this is a healthier population which has reduced HIV infection rates. So this is another example of the logic model. So this is again to highlight what I already mentioned, that outputs are the tangible products or services which result from the completion of activities. So you do the activities and outputs are the tangible products. So the school is built, people are trained, this many number of trainings done. So these are the tangible things. Outcomes are the intended or achieved short-term and medium-term effects of the outputs. So what the output leads to is the outcome. So outcomes always come after the outputs. So the outputs are achieved and then it is outcome. That means we said that people are made aware and then people start practicing. So that is more at the practice level. What people do with your program outcomes is the what people do with the program output is the outcome. Outputs are within the direct control of the program, but outcomes are not. You can make people knowledgeable, but you cannot make people practice something. So you can tell people that boiling water is good, they are convinced about it, but then until and unless they actually start boiling water, that is not an outcome. Okay, so outputs are controlled by the program, outcomes are influenced by the program. So you can control your outputs, but you cannot control your outcomes, because outcomes are dependent on the people, the community. Outputs are the immediate results after the completion of an activity. You do an activity and immediately you have your output. You do the training, yeah, people are trained, this many number of people are trained. Outcomes usually occur at some point in the short term to medium term future. So while the outputs are immediate, you complete a program and immediately you have your output, your training is done. But then these trained people, what do they do? How do they improve a particular system? That is an outcome. It will take time. So it happens in the future. So this is to help you understand the distinctions between output and outcome. This is another example of the logic model. I will ask you to take yourself a good look at it. It looks at a AIDS campaign. It talks about an AIDS campaign, and I hope you will be able to understand this from whatever discussions we have had till now. Now let us understand, and this is again a summary of what we have already talked about, that these different frameworks that we have discussed right now have different purposes. So the conceptual framework, it determines which factors the program will influence. So what are the different factors? So but can it form the basis of monitoring and evaluation? No, it cannot, but it can help to explain the results as to why what happened. The results framework shows the causal relationship between program and the objective. So we have the objectives and whether we are getting the results at definite times. Yes, it is at the objective level. So that means when we are planning our objectives, the results framework will tell us that okay, this is how we are going to proceed step by step. But the logic model is more comprehensive because it shows the causal relationship between inputs and the objectives. What we are going to put into the program, what is the objective, what is the goal, what is going to happen at different levels. So it helps at all stages of monitoring and evaluation of the program, from inputs to process to output to outcome and objective. So this is more comprehensive, the logic model. But then each of them, the different frameworks that we have explained, each have their own importance at different stages of the program. So the conceptual framework will be more important at the beginning. The results framework is more important during the process, whereas the logic model helps you to look at the entire thing comprehensively overall. We haven't discussed about the log frame, and I will talk about it later. Again, this is sort of a matrix and it has same input outcome purpose of the activity, the goal. It has different success measures, how you are going to verify the success measure, and the different assumptions. That means what else needs to be true in order that the next level is achieved. I will not discuss this in detail, but rather what you can do is, I have provided here 2 links of YouTube videos. You can watch these 2 videos to understand the log frame better. If you are also searching on YouTube, you could use the words log frame and Terry Smith, these 2 keywords together. If you use this, you will be able to identify these 2 videos by Terry Smith. These are good videos which will help you understand the log frame idea. I will talk about the log frame idea again later. So this is all for today. I hope you are able to understand the different M&E frameworks. If you have any doubt towards understanding the frameworks, please refer to the different study material which I have provided. You would have one material with you, which is this, the M&E fundamentals. Okay, a self-guided manual this is by Nina Frankel and Anastasia Gaze. You have that document as a soft copy with you. You can, this is an USAID document. You will be able to understand the frameworks better through this. So that's all for today. Thank you.